Welcome back to another TapRooT podcast. This week I'm joined by Marcus and Ken, and we're going to be talking about the journey to zero. Some people call it a myth, some people call it a fantasy, some people say no, every incident is preventable. So we're going to talk about is the journey to zero, is the slogan of zero harm, is that even a good safety goal?
I would say like a journey to zero is a good safety goal. If you set a goal of zero accidents, I would say you have to be careful there. But to journey towards it, to continue to make progress towards it, I think that's probably a pretty good goal.
So I think every person in safety probably has an opinion. It's not a neutral opinion about this. They either are, yes, we absolutely should be trying to get zero recordables, zero fatalities, zero harm.
And we failed if we don't get there.
And we fail if we don't get there.
It can't be an absolute. Right?
Or they're in the camp of it's an impossible fantasy to do this, and therefore making our metrics and our focus about zero harm harms the safety, we'll call it industry or the safety profession. It turns us all into TRIR cops, and it harms there. So I think there's a good, healthy position, and we're going to talk about that today.
Sounds good.
Here. So I think I want to start off with kind of an underlying ethos of this idea. So the idea is a journey to zero. That could be zero recordables, zero fatalities, zero accidents. And I think the underlying ethos is all accidents are preventable. So what do you guys think? Are all accidents preventable?
They sure look like that in hindsight. Right?
I think that's actually partially exactly right. I think in hindsight, you could always look at just about anything except a natural disaster, an earthquake or an asteroid strike. I guess those aren't preventable, but anything human related is in general preventable in hindsight and many times in foresight. But I think that assuming that, an accident happened, we therefore failed, and we should have 100% been able to prevent that. I like that, again, the journey towards that. I don't necessarily think that's 100% achievable, doing something like that.
So I've known several facilities, and I was a part of one that had, we were over 5 million man hours without a lost time. Now, that doesn't last forever, which is kind of, I think, one of the arguments that people make, that even if you achieve it through
a period of time. That's
through a period of time,
right?
But I think that's inherent in any system. There's a lot of companies, the DuPont systems of the world, or pretty much any company has on their company report goals of getting to zero with something.
Sure.
When it comes to accidents. And from an ethics standpoint, I think it's pretty clear you want to have that, because I don't want people going injured at their daily work.
Right. And us not caring about it.
Yeah,
as a company.
It's our responsibility to ensure that people are able to come to work and leave work in the same condition, right? That's what you want as an employer and as a business. You don't want to leave people maimed, right?
So I think on the surface, I think it does, like if you say, hey, we can't accept any accidents, like we're going zero, that's our goal. I think on the surface, it makes it seem like if you're in management, yeah, we care about our people. Like we want to make sure everybody goes home, just like you said. But if you dive down a little deeper at the employee level, and you've probably experienced this because you were in management, like as soon as management says you can't have zero accidents, we don't want that. Well, then, are you reporting them all?
That's
right.
Are
you trying to hide them to make everybody happy? Or are you saying, well, we're just set up, like something's going to happen, and then that turns your culture a little more toxic?
Because there's a lot that goes into that statement, there will be zero accidents. There's a lot that has to go into that. There's the top level piece and the going down where we're saying we don't want any accidents. We want to make sure that people are being careful, and you're going to do this and do that and do that. But to get to that zero accidents, you have to have metrics on the other end. And how are those metrics being done? And if your metrics aren't catching all this stuff, or if they're being hidden, or if you as a company are fiddling with the numbers so they look good, then on both sides of that, if we're not trying hard to get to zero and we're fiddling with the numbers to make it look like we're at zero, both of those are problems.
And I think if you give people the false sense of security that because you're not reporting and you don't have that data, then they start to become complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we've done it, right?
We're there.
After did you say 5 million man hours?
5 million man hours. Yeah.
I mean, who would want to be the guy that breaks that trend?
Right.
And what does everybody look at? Like when that guy breaks that trend, it's like, oh,
We
we
know
had
who that
5
was.
million hours until you did this.
We zeroed that.
We had shirts and a steak dinner. What do you think?
Yeah, we don't get that this year.
Yeah. So I think there's a dangerous side to this, which is you've got on the one hand the altruistic side where we as a company don't want to harm people. So what do we do in order to make this incentive work? Well, we're going to tie it to a bonus. We're going to have a metric that, managers or project management or the facility, their bonus is tied to safety metrics.
And they're held to that, right?
And they're held to that because we have a safety metric. And when you tie it, suddenly you've added a monetary incentive to not report, like you talked to Ken, or to, we'll say, play the game. And I've known several safety professionals. They were good people, but anytime an incident would happen, there was a conversation, and that conversation is this really a recordable? Is it really a record? Let's look at the nuance of the law and say, well, I got they were injured, but it was just Tylenol, and we administered the Tylenol, not a doctor, and so therefore it's like they're working through this.
And I've even seen it even deeper than that, where we say, well, oh crap, hey, make sure that he doesn't get any medications on this unless the doctor really needs him to, because
Take him to this doctor.
this
because
doctor
he'll know.
here, right? So those aren't getting you to those zero harm things. Those are metric
Gaming
number
the system.
games,
Gaming the
right?
system.
And that's
And how many learning opportunities do you
did
waste?
you lose on that?
Yeah.
That's right. Because
Yes.
our root, for some reason we've decided that only recordables are things we're going to investigate.
Well,
Well, do them right, and therefore, we don't have any recordables because we jimmied the numbers, and now we don't investigate properly.
yeah.
And I think you spend a lot of resources. How much brain power is sitting asking this question of, is it a recordable or not?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just easier just going and doing it.
And I get it. The requirement is there. You've got to report these. So there's a reporting requirement to
Right,
it.
right.
And your contracts could be based on this.
Sure.
So there's a whole incentive structure to this of, hey, we've set it up where these metrics are important to an industry, and if we have a mistake made, we're done.
Yeah, maybe you can't even bid on the job because your metrics are too
Metrics too
bad.
low. Yep.
So there's a huge incentive when you have these lagging indicators for this, and I think it comes to an approach. There's a common HOP statement that a lot of, or New View as well, where it talks. A lot of people consider safety as the absence of accidents, and New View and HOP would say safety isn't the absence of accidents; it's the presence of capacity for absorbing problems. So it's not that we didn't have an accident, it's that when we had a mistake, we had enough capacity in our system, enough safeguards in place to prevent it from becoming catastrophic. It's not just that people didn't make a mistake, people are gonna make mistakes, right? That's principle number one in HOP, right? People are gonna make mistakes there. So human error is normal, and we have to work at building that capacity. I think that's a good philosophical difference between just looking purely at zero and looking at what it takes to get zero consistently.
I'll be honest, when I teach in different areas of the world, they have much different philosophies on exactly this. And in the United States, we're much more regulation driven. I know that sounds weird because Europe has a lot of regulations, but the implementation of the regulation is driven hard in the United States by the regulation itself. So how do I meet the reg? I just got to meet it. I just got to, and that's where we start seeing people doing the fudge and the numbers stuff, because see, I met the requirement. Everything's good. I met the requirement. In Europe, it's a little more holistic view. As here's the regulation. What kinds of things can I do to meet that kind of regulation? And the end result of what we're doing gets us to the regulation, as opposed to the regulation drives my thought process. And the U.S. is a little more regulation driven as far as meeting it. Europe is a little more holistic about how we get our systems set up to eventually get to that regulatory requirement.
I know one of the biggest challenges in healthcare is, how litigious our society is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's part of it? They're less litigious, so companies can focus on be more transparent when stuff happens and learn from it?
It could be, and I shouldn't just say Europe. I should be more, because each
Maybe
country
I said
there.
that, maybe.
I did. No, I did. Because in Europe, it depends which country you're in. There are some countries that are very, step-by-step procedure-ish kind of driven. Some countries are more that way as opposed to others. So I'm kind of taking Europe as a maybe too broad a thought process. But the EU regulations a lot of time. I wish I don't have a good answer for that, because I don't know their litigiousness. Is that a word?
It is now.
I'm not sure. I'm not as familiar with how they're set up there as far as the legal side goes. So I don't have a good answer for that. I do know that they are a little bit more thinking about how do I get my, big picture wise, when I'm done with all my stuff, did I meet the regulation, as opposed to regulation says this, let's build everything around that to make sure that we meet it, which is what we do in the U.S.
So our bases are covered. In case we do
That's
have
right.
something, we have proof that, hey, we've done this as a
Which
company.
could be the litigious kind of problem.
Right, and
Yep.
then as you're saying, in other parts of the world, maybe they're focused on the final outcome,
Yep.
not so much.
Although you look in the UK, people were going to jail for stuff, right? Which we don't have as much here in the U.S. It's not the the police don't come to your office and arrest you here in the U.S. very often. That's pretty rare. I don't know if I've ever heard of that.
So there's definitely, like in Australia, they have the same. They have there's management is accountable for those legally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you hit something on this as well with the holistic approach. If we look at zero harm, the purpose of it is, as an organization, we need to drive towards the actions, the behaviors, the processes that we need in order to get zero. And I think from an ethos of accidents are preventable, I think it's fair to say the majority of accidents are preventable,
Mm-hmm.
but not all the organizations know the best practices they need to implement.
Right.
So a lot of times, people use the evidence to say, hey, well, no company's achieved this, as evidence for it can't be done.
Right.
And I think a lot of the times that might be backwards, because one, management turnover is such a big role in company culture, and culture is what probably, leadership culture specifically, not employee culture, but leadership culture is probably the biggest indicator to me of if this is going to be a zero harm or not kind of
Right.
company. Do you actually produce zero harm?
Right.
If you have leadership that is very much, motivated by ensuring safeguards are present, being followed, really disciplined in that approach, I think you get a much better outcome
Right.
compared to a more lax management culture. And so I think it's really more down to maybe not just the presence of capacity for problems, but the discipline in ensuring that presence that presence is actually being maintained. And so I think one of probably the biggest reasons why the journey to zero fails so frequently is because we got to 5 million, but we forgot what got us there.
Right.
Because that history gets lost in management turnover, employee turnover, and you built the process, but you didn't build the system for keeping it healthy.
Right.
So I think a lot of the case, this holistic approach side to it is to say, hey, we have these metrics, but the metrics aren't the goal. It's not.
It's the result.
It's the result. The metrics tell you, it's your scoreboard in some ways, but
That's why I don't have a big problem having metrics as one of the things you're looking at. I think that's perfectly okay. But it depends how you're using those metrics. If those metrics are how you're running all of your safety programs and everything is focused on ensuring the metric meets that number, and on a very specific each by problem, right? By each problem, I'm going to make sure it meets the requirement, as opposed to the more general, how do I get my company culture to get me to that number? And
right. What are the processes? What are our practices that achieve the number we wanted? Like, if
That's
we're
right.
just looking at the final number, we've got to ask ourselves: are we auditing the processes that get us there? Do we have a robust root cause analysis system? Are we learning from every mistake that happens out there, or every equipment
Are we being
failure?
proactive with this? Because I think that's the biggest difference in companies that have a low versus don't, is the ones that have a low are really, really good at the proactive side.
Right.
They're really focused on building those safeguards, building that ability to look for those safeguards.
Yep.
Now, I don't know how much chicken and the egg that is, because it's like, if you have all this time because you're not doing all these investigations, you don't have all these problems, you have time to be more proactive. I don't know if it's chicken and the egg, but I've seen companies that decreased it because they became more proactive. They focused on the proactive.
And I think there's another step in there too. I also think, besides just the proactive, which you'll see me stand on my soapbox talking about proactive use of the system. I think it's critical. But I also, kind of in between there, I see companies that only investigate the big stuff, and they only do investigations on major problems. And that is also part of your company culture, where we just say, we'll wait for something really, really bad to happen, then we'll do a good investigation on it. There are so many opportunities to fix those little things that get you towards those good metrics. If you wait till something bad happens that screws up your metric to investigate it, you haven't done the holistic stuff, the big stuff, to fix the little problems that affect your metric.
And in big investigations, there's so many things that can trip you up, right? The honesty of the people involved. Do they think they're going to get punished? Are they trying to protect their coworkers?
Do they believe
management,
it? Do they
pushing
believe
their
management?
ideas? Do they believe management?
Those guys, those management, when they say, hey, safety is job one, don't get me wrong, I think that's wonderful, the thinking on that a little bit, but nobody believes that. Nobody believes that my company who makes widgets, the most important thing we do here is safety. Nobody believes that.
Right.
It's a nice thought.
Safety's third.
Yeah, right. Safety first is just, it's not something believable by your employees.
Well, and going back to your point, if you can have a robust system for the smaller stuff, that's a lot quicker to do, right? And you're finding these holes in your systems, maybe one or two at a time, instead of this big, huge investigation. And then we've got all these corrective actions we need to introduce. No, keep it simple.
And it's already affected your
continuous
metric.
improvement.
It's already affected your metric by that point too.
Oh, that's
right?
true too.
So you've just had a really bad problem, and now your metric has already been affected. So if you're stuck on metrics and that's what you're caring about, well, you can't wait till the big stuff shows up. You've got to be working on the little stuff proactively and working on
what's
smaller
the
investigations.
little stuff, like audit findings, like significant issue and audit findings before something truly happens?
First aid cases instead of waiting until it's a lost time injury.
No,
those kinds of things.
I can
Smaller
never
stuff.
tell with some of these, because there's an element to metrics that is politics in a large corporation. And,
Sure.
And it was honestly something I was terrible at, because I was trying to always be, in my mind, ethically honest, which is this is the result. I don't want to fight over is it a recordable or not, or
Right.
If I'm trying to skirt the rule, I am missing the point. That was my belief on it. But that will sometimes harm your career, because organizations that do push on the metrics, or people that push on the metrics, well, they do look better in the end of the year. And that's one of the things that makes decisions on who gets promoted and who's a good facility and a bad facility. So sometimes the attention to those details does help a career, not necessarily a company culture.
That tells me that your company metrics then aren't all inclusive. They're not including all the right things.
Oh,
Again, there's nothing wrong with TIR, looking at that. That's perfectly okay. But there's other metrics you can look at to say, hey, how many have we had reported this year? Oh, reports have gone way down. All right. Well, is that because everybody's afraid to report stuff, or is it really because we had no problems? What does that
If
really
I hear
mean?
that personally, I'm like, hey, good news. We don't have to look any deeper.
Yeah, stop looking. Don't look.
That's the answer I was looking for. We're better. Okay, let's move on to
probably,
production.
It probably tells me that when you're at that point where you're trying to tweak the numbers so I look good at the end of the year, it probably tells me I'm using not all the right metrics to determine whether I'm doing a good
I wish
job
I could
or not.
remember the football coach that said, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. But
It's probably from Michigan.
Bill Belichick, is that what he said? I think. So there's definitely a you need to probably be following it on the ethical perspective, but you also there's an element to your career can come down to metrics. And I think companies have an unhealthy obsession sometimes with the number and not the process it took to get you to that number. Right. And so I know a lot of healthy management is really focused on, I want to make sure our process is right. The numbers will come if we're doing the right things.
That's right. That's exactly it. Yes.
And so I like to believe that that's the way all business would run, but I this is a culture thing, and it's not going to be the case.
Yeah, we're realistic here.
Just finding the time to have the oversight for the details, right? Making sure people are doing stuff on a day-to-day basis that leads and builds towards the metrics you want to see. I mean, that's tough, right? If you're running a company, you have a leadership team, there's so many other priorities that you have coming at you. It just takes the commitment, and it's hard to do.
It doesn't feel like that's a priority until something bad happens, and now all of a sudden it's a priority.
Now, Mark tells a story, and it's one of those that sticks with me a lot, which is it's one of the mining stories. They had a mine site, and they were talking to him on the phone, and when they originally brought in TapRooT, they were having at least a fatality every year. So they had a fatality every year, and they had called Mark up, and they were doing a fatality investigation, and in that conversation they talked with Mark, and they said, well, we actually haven't done a fatality investigation in about 3 or 4 years now. We haven't had a fatality. And they had started, and he said, well, tell me about what's happened. He's like, well, we used to kill somebody about every year, and we really went hard on the major investigations, and then we stopped having fatalities. So we really went hard on our lost times, and we stopped having lost times, and he's like, and basically we don't have anything else to investigate, so we do proactive until this incident. Now, the incident that they were doing was a person was driving to the mine site and got killed in a car accident where they were sitting at a red light. It's one of the ones Mark uses a lot, which is they're just sitting at a red light and got hit by somebody. And Mark's like, he was talking to me, he's like, this doesn't really sound like it's a fatality with your company. And they're like, it's not, but
it counts in the numbers.
Well, it didn't even count. They were choosing to count it in the numbers to cover that family, so that way it paid for costs and stuff, because they hadn't had one in so long. And that was like, well, we want to do this, and they're struggling then because they made this choice, and now they have to try to do root cause analysis on a car crash where somebody was sitting at a red light and got hit by somebody.
Yep.
And it was like, this is a lot that we don't have control over. And so they went through that and had a conversation on it. But I think that's you can get to that point if you're focusing very heavy on it, but typically those stories don't last forever. Something eventually comes up. The safeguard gaps align. Something you didn't know was even a risk might come up.
The other thing I see with that too, and I'm glad you brought this up, companies will use a robust system like TapRooT to investigate the big stuff or fatalities, and they start to see the big stuff go away because they learned so much in those major investigations. But they don't take that extra step you just talked about. Well, now that we have the time, let's move down to the next level. And if they don't do that, well, if they're getting better and they're not having those major incidents anymore, who's doing analysis? Who's doing root cause analysis?
Right.
Nobody.
How often are they doing them?
Right. Nobody is. And then what happens to skill over time if you're not using it? Right. It degenerates.
Yep.
So then you get into that situation when you do have the next accident, you're not in a place where you can have the same results as you did before because your people aren't as good at it.
Or that leader gets promoted or leaves to a better position, and a new guy comes in, and they go, well, we don't have any major accidents. What do we need this TapRooT thing for? And you're like, oh, I feel like we're just starting at year one again.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely those opportunities for looking at your system holistically. I think companies do need an approach. Your metric of 0 can't be your only guiding metric.
Right.
You've got to have, like you said, Ken, there's got to be things on the capacity side. And so I think the new view and the hot two and the people that are very much anti, we'll say 0 as a goal, I think they have a legitimate point that you need to focus on the preemptive side, the proactive side. I do think they sometimes want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. While TIIR is not a good predictor, it is at least a metric you can use. And
it's something, and
it's a relatively objective one.
Right.
It's not perfectly objective one because people can game it. There's a podcast that I saw, which is it a TIIR? Is it a recordable? And they go over unique stories. Like one of them was a worker claimed Bigfoot attacked him on the job site in a forest when they were doing tree cutting. Is it a recordable? And you're like, is this a real story? Did this employee got hurt and he's just making something up because he doesn't want to say he got hurt on the job?
Yeah, that's pretty
So those are little funny things like that do occur when you have this trying to game just the number. I think companies have to take both the holistic approach on the positive, but also recognize that there's a lot that we can control, and if we target getting to zero, there is a level that's achievable of that. It may not be forever, but if we're doing the right process and we're really disciplined about doing that process, we're going to get ever closer to that, and it is maybe even achievable. Maybe not. Maybe the organization's too big. There's too much leadership discrepancy across top to bottom. But
even with that, there's pieces of it that can be fixed.
Yeah.
Maybe the entire from top to bottom isn't going to be perfect, but if you're in charge of North America, well, then the North American side can go ahead and jump on this stuff and get better, and European side they'll catch up or whatever, or vice versa.
Yeah,
works, right?
It's a leadership driven thing. So
Right.
if your leadership is actually sincere about this, the things that they can do from, I always call it demonstrating what they care about. That's what drives this to zero, is if they actually care about it, what are you doing to demonstrate that you
Right.
care about it?
Right.
So that's kind of, I think, a good explanation, a good back and forth. If somebody wanted to learn more about how to demonstrate what you care about from a proactive side, I know we've got at least two different options in here. One of them is at the TapRooT Summit, you've got a proactive course.
Proactive and auditing course I do with Nancy Hitchens.
And what do they learn from that?
So we talk about the TapRooT process, of course, but I think sometimes companies miss that you can also learn from audit findings. You can learn where things start breaking down, and instead of just saying, okay, well, this guy didn't follow policy while we were doing this audit, how are we going to fix that? And then the conversation turns into, well, it's Marcus. He's usually a pretty good employee on his good days. So maybe we just put him through retraining. He'll be more careful. Or maybe he's not such a good employee. Let's discipline him. Let's get a record that he's got to go soon, and let everybody else know this isn't okay. Or we put more rules in place. We try to make the job idiot-proof. But if you're sticking with those, we know those don't work because we're trying to fix people, and people aren't going to be fixed. We're all fallible. So instead, why not investigate that, get all the circumstances, the context, the conditions around those audit findings,
right,
and take it through the TapRooT process as a significant issue and find out, where did your systems break down that allowed this to happen? And let's fix those and prove that we fixed them in our future audits by not seeing the same results.
Because you don't want to see another guy coming in and doing the same thing.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can fix that guy. I guess we can get rid of him, but the next guy's going to do the same thing.
And if we put those corrective actions in place and we go look and then we say, oh, we don't see this mistake or this shortcut happening again, well, now we got proof that we fixed it. And we can prove, well, here's the most significant event that would have happened, that could have happened because of this audit finding. Well, now we don't have to worry about it because we have proof that these guys aren't taking the same shortcut because we use TapRooT proactively.
Right.
And they don't wait for something.
This is a
bad
2-day pre-summit course, right?
It's a 2-day pre-summit course, and it's a course on its own. So if companies want to get proactive with TapRooT, and I think part of our job is to help them mature the TapRooT program over time.
Right.
Well, maybe if you have time to do the major stuff now and that's all you have, well, we know if you continue to use it, your major stuff's going to decrease. And that gives you time, just like Alex said earlier, to start focusing on the smaller stuff, which could be your audit findings.
Right. Right.
Yep. So we've got the auditing course at the summit. We also cover this in the human error course, more from the leadership side, from a culture standpoint of, again, how do leaders demonstrate what they care for. So we talk a lot about responsibility, and we've done a podcast on Rickover and Rickover philosophy, and a lot of that is how does leadership take responsibility for their organization and guide that responsibility down to the operator level.
We also have that TapRooT Executive Leadership course
Yep.
that touches on this also.
Covers the exact same topic in there, which is, again, I think critical for leaders to understand is audits are not just on the compliance side. It's not just about meeting that regulation. It's also about, as a leader, when I demonstrate what I care about, it's going out, having those conversations with people about work, the way it's done, what the right philosophy is, how does it match leadership's philosophy in the way that work should be done. And I think that communication process So I know we've had several podcasts that touched on that from a leadership level, from we talk about the two-way street and psychology. So there's a lot of those other things. If people want to learn more about that, they can check out those podcasts, or they can come to the auditing course, the human error course, or sign up for a leadership course. So those are all great opportunities. You can find those links down below to those different opportunities coming up. And we hope to see you at an upcoming course or catch you at the next TapRooT podcast.